Hello and welcome. This is All 24 News World News Program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Karim Fazakari. These are your headlines. Calm returns to Sri Lankan streets after protests against President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who fled his palace to step down from his post. Japanese people started voting on Sunday to renew half of the upper house of parliament after the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A mass shooting at a tavern in Johannesburg, Soweto Township has killed 14 people and left 3 others in critical condition. Thousands of people in Argentina took to the streets to protest against the national government. Hello again, those were today's headlines. First in our news, calm returned to the streets of Colombo, the commercial capital of Sri Lanka today, and the protesters expressed their happiness with the approval of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who fled his palace to step down from his post after crowds of demonstrators, angry at the collapse of the country's economy, stormed the headquarters of the government.
Thousands of protesters in Sri Lanka's capital, Colombo, stormed the president's official residence on Saturday after months of mounting public anger over the country's worst economic crisis in decades.
I'm not wrong in saying that we have won this struggle today. We got together, leaving aside all differences, and surrounded the president's house. We are expecting a statement from Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa to say that he has resigned.
Live video broadcast on Facebook by a local news outlet showed protesters inside the residence packing rooms and corridors and chanting slogans demanding President Rajapaksa's resignation. On Sunday, protesters continued to roam around the president's residence, parts of which were destroyed. Others set fire on the private home of Prime Minister Ranil, who also agreed to resign to make way for an all-party government. Neither the president nor the prime minister was present when people attacked their homes.
The people show the nation and the international community the power of the people. Now the people have been asking for a number of months to resign Gota. They asked Gota to resign and give the power to people.
The island's country of 22 million people is struggling under a severe foreign exchange shortage that has limited essential imports of fuel, food, and medicine, plunging it into the worst economic crisis since independence in 1948. Soaring inflation at record of 54.6% in June and expected to hit 70% in the coming months has heaped hardship on the population.
Japanese voters started voting on Sunday to renew half of the upper house of parliament, an election largely overshadowed by the assassination 2 days earlier of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during an electoral meeting in the west of the country.
After the assassination of former leader Shinzo Abe, voters in Japan headed to polls on Sunday for the upper house election. 545 candidates from 15 parties competing to win half of the 248-seat upper house.
There are many hot topics, like economy and security in this upper house election, especially price hikes led by the Ukraine war, together with the yen's depreciation and the surging price of imports.
The polls, which are typically seen as a referendum on the country's government, many opposition parties are trying to topple the Liberal Democratic Party, which has ruled Japan for a very long period of time, almost without interruption. The latter, which was widely favored in the polls, is expected to win more than 70 of the 125 seats.
I focused my vote on the issue of national security, because we now have the war in Ukraine. I also focused on education and child support policies, because I have a child.
そうですね。
I'm worried about the economy because it's not very good overall. I'm very worried about the future of Japan.
A broad victor of the Senate would consolidate the power of Fumio Kishida to carry out his economic and military policies, which has raised concerns in the archipelago recently.
With regard to the assassination of former Prime Minister Abe, we are in a democratic country, and I despise the use of violence to eliminate someone. I firmly believe that if people have disagreements, they must resolve them through dialogue.
Some voters hope that this election could make what Abe had done for the country worthwhile, and whose assassination has deeply bruised and moved Japan, and seen as an attack on democracy itself.
A mass shooting at a tavern in Johannesburg, Soweto Township has killed 14 people and left 3 others in critical condition on Saturday night. Police said that men arrived in a minibus taxi and opened fire on some of the patrons at the bar. The shooting in the Soweto bar comes 2 weeks after 21 teenagers were found dead in a tavern in the city of East London.
12 people passed on here at the crime scene, and the other 2 they passed at Qanat Hospital. One died on arrival, and another one died an hour later. And we're still having 9 people who are sick, who are injured in the hospital, and 3 of those are in the critical condition. We wish them a speedy recovery. This incident, it happened around 12:30 in the morning. In this license, this is a licensed tavern, and it was still during the operational hours of the tavern.
And from Africa to Latin America now, thousands of people in the Plaza de Mayo in Argentina went out to the streets to protest against the International Monetary Fund and in opposition to the national government. Sofian Kenturi with more details.
Amid Independence Day and the country's increasing inflation, thousands of people in Buenos Aires, including leftist parties, union and social organizations, went out to the streets to protest the government's action in the face of the country's socio-economic difficulties, and calling for general strike and ceasing payments in Argentina's agreement in the International Monetary Fund.
The debt is unpayable, and it shows every day all the efforts to reach an agreement with the International Monetary Fund have exacerbated the crisis. If you were in bad shape in March, now we are much worse. When we call for the debt to be defaulted on, we also call for the debt to be thoroughly investigated. Why? Because the Argentine people have the right to know who benefited from this debt, who indebted us, and for what interests.
Concerns are surfacing in the country about the negotiation of debt of $45 billion with the International Monetary Fund, and unleashed inflation that accumulates 30% so far this year, that according to analysts could reach 70%, in addition to shortages and rising dollar prices in the official and black markets.
It is a colonial pact of independence eluding that we are living through. No, we must break the ties with the International Monetary Fund and stop paying all foreign debt payments in order to be able to invest in work, wages, health and education, which is what we need.
While traditional left-wing parties packed the Plaza de Mayo, a smaller right-wing group headed from the city's obelisk toward the square and struggled to pass through a police line that was attempting to avoid any kind of violence between the two opposed groups.
The race to replace Boris Johnson as UK Prime Minister is getting more crowded. 4 further candidates have joined the field of competitor Conservatives as the committee overseeing the contest looks to speed up the process of whittling down the numbers. Sajid Javid, the former Health Minister, and former Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt both announced their campaigns for the elections. The Conservative Party's Committee of Legislators will set out the exact rules and timetable for the contest next week. And in the same context, candidates seeking to replace Boris Johnson, British Prime Minister, have announced their candidacy. Johnson has angered many of his own party by insisting that he'll stay for now rather than hand over the power to his deputy. Zara Ferjani.
Thank you all very much.
24 hours after British Boris Johnson announced he would stand down as Prime Minister, attentions turned to what and who comes next, with high hopes of restoring trust in the government. Analysts say that British Defence Minister Ben Wallace, former Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, and Junior Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt are among the favourites to replace Johnson as Prime Minister.
It was such a volatile market yesterday. I think Ben Wallace, Penny Mordaunt and Rishi Sunak all at one point or another shared top spot in the betting.
Two candidates have confirmed they are running in the Conservative leadership election. Tom Tugendhat put himself forward to replace Johnson as Prime Minister, saying a fresh start is needed. Former Chancellor of the Exchequer Rishi Sunak also said he was running to the position. A poll by Opinion Research shows Sunak is the biggest favourite to become the Conservative Party's new leader.
Having said that, it looks so far from the data that we're getting like Rishi Sunak is the most popular candidate. He's the one who most people say would make a good Prime Minister.
British Education Minister James Cleverly told the BBC that Johnson had made it clear to step down when his successor is chosen.
But we have, as I say, a number of people who I think would do a fantastic job. I think the process now will be done professionally but promptly, so that we can get a new Prime Minister who can form a new team in good time.
Johnson survived a vote of confidence on June 6th, but more than 40% of Conservative lawmakers declared that they had lost confidence in his ability to govern. And in the intervening month, those who most wanted to see his downfall have been racing for his job.
To the United States now, hundreds of demonstrators marched to the White House to demand U.S. President Joe Biden to defend the right to abortion more vigorously. The demonstration came 2 weeks after the Supreme Court repealed Roe v. Wade, the ruling that had guaranteed abortion access nationwide for nearly 50 years. The organizers say an estimated 10,000 people gathered from across the U.S. to demand health protection rights.
I have had 2 abortions in my life, and one was for medical health reasons, like I would have died otherwise. And I think that's just not something that as a first world country we should ever not have the ability to do. Like I shouldn't have to choose between my death and not being able, like my survival.
The pro-democracy groups in Sudan announced to form a revolutionary council against General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, refusing his offer of civilian government, while the demonstrators maintained their sit-ins to demand the departure of the military leader. Manal Siam, one of the coordinators of this coalition, explained that this council will regroup the revolutionary forces under the orders of a unified leadership. According to a UN atomic watchdog report on Saturday, Iran has increased its uranium enrichment by using sophisticated equipment at its underground Fordo reactor that can switch between enrichment stages more readily. Iran has notified the AIEA that it intends to utilize the equipment to enrich to up to 20% purity, which is less than the up to 60% it is currently producing elsewhere, and the nearly 90% of weapons grade. However, because of the updated subheaders make it considerably simpler and faster to move to higher purity levels, Western diplomats have repeatedly expressed alarm about them. A rocket struck Kharkiv on Saturday, wounding at least 6 people, according to local officials. The shelling destroyed one building and severely damaged another one nearby. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded, saying that only modern and powerful weapons could stop Russia's attacks on his country.
In the last 24 hours alone, Russia has hit Mykolaiv and Kharkiv communities in Zaporozhye region. It targeted the residential area, absolutely on deliberate and purposeful basis. ordinary houses, civilian objects, people. There are victims, dead, wounded. No day or night passes without the brutal strikes of Russian artillery in Donbas towns. Only modern and powerful weapons can really stop such terrorist actions.
Still with the Russia-Ukraine file, British-made armored vehicles FV-103 Spartan arrived on the front line in the Donbas region, where a Ukrainian tank commander from the 14th Mechanized Brigade says the Ukrainian army still needs tanks, howitzers, and lots of long-range artillery.
They have a lot of resources because this is a big country, and this country is an aggressor who is always at war, who always accumulates weapons. We can oppose them, but above all, we need machines, weapons, and motivation.
Aviation leaders have warned that the summer months will present a major challenge for Europe's airports, which will result in mayhem for millions of travelers. Numerous flights were cancelled this week at Dublin Airport and Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport as a result of long lines and depressingly frequent cancellations. The future doesn't seem too bright. 2/3 of European airports are expected to have delayed this summer, according to Air Council International, the industry association for airports in Europe. The European Commission vowed on Friday to step up its work with Morocco to fight people smugglers following the deaths of 23 people at the Moroccan-Spanish border 2 weeks ago. EU Commissioner for Home Affairs Ilva Jonasson and Spanish Interior Minister Fernando Grande Marlaska met with Morocco's Interior Minister in Rabat to discuss the events of June 24th, when hundreds of sub-Saharan migrants and asylum seekers attempted to storm through a border post and scale a border fence into Melilla.
Two weeks after the tragic event at the border crossing between Melilla and Nador, where people lost their lives and a lot of law enforcement and security forces were also injured, we have discussed how we can further cooperate on fighting the smugglers, preventing such violent and dangerous situation as we saw 2 weeks ago. It's important that we address these dangerous situations and these well-organized smuggling groups together to save lives and to manage migration in an orderly way.
3 Algerian truck drivers were seriously injured after they were subjected to an armed attack on the outskirts of Gao in Mali, according to a statement by the Algerian Foreign Ministry. The statement specified that 4 armed men who were riding motorcycles demanded that the drivers pay money, and after they failed, they resorted to using their firearms. As the statement clarified, one of the injured was discharged from the hospital, while the other 2 drivers are under medical supervision. To a different story now, 70% of Romania's surface is affected by drought. People in a number of areas have access to tap water only for a few hours every day. Traffic on the Danube River is also affected as the water level is half of the multi-annual average and is estimated to keep dropping. At least 16 people have died, dozens were injured, and around 40 people went missing after flash floods triggered by sudden rains swept through pilgrims' camps during an annual Hindu pilgrimage to an icy Himalayan cave in Kashmir. Still with religious feasts, Muslims in India on Sunday offered Eid al-Adha prayers, the festival of sacrifice which commemorates Prophet Abraham's test of faith. In New Delhi, hundreds of worshippers gathered at Jama Masjid, a mosque built in the 17th century. And speaking of Eid al-Adha, or the Feast of Sacrifice, is celebrated for its second day by Muslims all over the world as a major holiday. The majority of Muslims attended the special prayers held at different major mosques and Islamic centers all over the world. Let's follow the report.
At the Mustafa Mahmoud Mosque in Cairo, Muslims in Egypt held prayers on Saturday in observance of Eid al-Adha. The celebration, sometimes referred to as the Feast of Sacrifice, honors what Muslims consider to be Prophet Ibrahim's readiness as a test of his faith. This year, with the easing of virus measures, there was a sharp increase in the number of people present in the prayer. After praying, many families enjoyed the festival atmosphere, buying balloons for their children.
Eid is beautiful, and in prayer today, people are present, and the corona has calmed down, and there are no masks. May you and every year be well.
I feel very happy that all these people came to pray. Every year the number of people increases. There is love and acceptance between people and each other.
More than 3 million Muslims in the UK put on their best outfit and go to the mosque, or outdoor worship area, paid in prayer ceremony in the first day of Eid al-Adha. After then, it's usual to hug, greet one another with the phrase of Eid Mubarak or Blessed Eid, give children gifts and visit friends and family. In Palestine, Palestinian worshippers perform Eid al-Adha prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque in the old city of Al-Quds on the first day of the festival celebrated by Muslims around the world. In Algeria, the celebration of Eid al-Adha is surrounded by a multitude of customs and traditions that all Muslims are required to observe. When it's time for the Eid prayer, men, women and kids dress good and head to the mosque. Those with means will honor Ibrahim's sacrifice by sacrificing one of their domestic animals, which are allowed from Allah. Participants chant the name of Allah and offering statements and prayer while performing the sacrifice to serve as a reminder that our life is sacred. 2/3 of the meat is distributed to the less fortunate, so they can participate in the Eid al-Adha feast as well. The remaining meat is prepared as a part of a festive supper to be enjoyed with family and friends.
On the occasion of Eid al-Adha still holiday, the harsh economic conditions in the Gaza Strip are overshadowing what should be a festive occasion. Islam Saint.
Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are preparing to welcome a major Islamic holiday. However, people in the enclave struggle with worsening economic conditions and price hikes of livestock.
Given the siege and the bad economic conditions in Gaza, the economic conditions are just terrible. The market is full of sheep and goats, but there is no purchasing power because people don't have money and their conditions are bad.
We hope the situation will improve and that everyone gets to sacrifice an animal because Eid al-Adha is a source of happiness for everybody.
In Gaza, cattle, sheep, and the fodder they eat are usually imported from abroad. Merchants said most of the people come to inquire about the prices, but rarely make a purchase.
As you can see, there is more livestock than there are buyers. No one is buying or selling. The price of fodder is always high.
With the global supply chain disruptions and increasing costs of shipping, consumer prices have gone up, and merchants complain that this is limiting people's purchasing power.
Not only Palestine, but the entire Middle East depends on cereals from Russia and Ukraine. This is the main reason why prices have risen drastically. The only solution for sheep farmers is to reduce prices of fodder.
Zionist occupier has blockaded the Gaza Strip since 2007. The blockade, which restricts the movement of goods and people in and out of Gaza, has devastated the economy. Eid al-Adha, the Feast of Sacrifice, is typically marked by the communal prayers, large social gatherings, slaughtering of livestock and distributing meat to poor people. However, this year's upcoming holiday is overshadowed by the conditions in Gaza.
And finally in our news, Alina Rybakina became the first player from Kazakhstan to win a Grand Slam title as she beat Tunisian Tadsi Jabeur in Wimbledon final on Saturday. Rybakina, 23-year-old, fought back to win and become the youngest Wimbledon singles champion since 2011. Rybakina became the first woman ranked outside of the WTA's top 20 to win a Wimbledon since Venus Williams in 2007. Well, that's all we have for now, but before we go, here's a reminder of our top stories. Calm returns to Sri Lankan streets after protest against President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who fled his palace to step down from his post. Japanese people started voting on Sunday to renew half of the upper house of parliament after the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. A mass shooting at a tavern in Johannesburg's Soweto Township has killed 14 people and left 3 others in critical condition. You also followed in our news thousands of people in Argentina taking to the streets to protest against the national government. Well, that's it. This is Karim Zachary signing off. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.